Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I'm co-founder and managing partner of Financing Solutions. Financing Solutions is a leading provider of lines of credit to small businesses. Our line of credit program is fast, easy, inexpensive, and costs nothing to set up, making it a great cash backup plan for your business. If you'd like to learn more, please feel free to visit our website at www.fscreditline.com. That's FS as in Financing Solutions. Creditline.com, or give us a call at 862-207-4118. Just remember, the time to set up a credit line is when you don't need it, so that when you do need it, it is ready for you to go. And our line of credit doesn't cost anything to set it up, doesn't cost anything when you're not being used. So it's like the entrepreneur's dream. It's a cash backup plan for an emergency. And let me tell you, if you've ever come close to missing payroll, you'll know what it's like to have a cash backup plan. I certainly have had that experience in my life. So today I'm excited to be speaking with Barbara Alves from J.J. Miller Incorporated. Barbara has over 30 years of experience in all aspects of business growth, management, improvement, and customer retention. And she has real hands-on experience. Barbara opened J.J. Miller LLC as a business management consulting firm dedicated to the growth and progress of small businesses. Barbara wants her clients to benefit from the lessons she's learned from her own successes and failures, from her start in customer service to her years as a chief operating officer. That's why every client engagement starts with the first understanding the vision and aspirations of the owner or leadership team. And if they have gotten a little muddled over the years, then Barbara will bring them back into focus. So today I'd like to welcome Barbara to the Entrepreneurs MBA podcast.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I'm good. Good is a great topic. I think that so today's topic is difficulty that business owners have at new revenue levels. And if you are a first-time entrepreneur and you're building your business right now, I think this topic couldn't be more appropriate, but you may not understand how getting to different revenues will change how you are as a business owner and how your business is. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that is really the point. And to your point, I would never direct this at people who are true entrepreneurs. They've got into business with a plan. They know growth. They know the exit. They're really in business to make business. I look at this as folks who, they are entrepreneurs, but they got into it for a personal reason. I like to say maybe they hung out their shingle, started a business, they lost a job, they had a change in life. They were looking for a little more control of their life or their business. Especially in New Jersey, we see a lot of people in the professional area or the trades who go out and do this. But even people who've invented something or in the tech space, maybe they have software. But one I always laugh at, props where they're working for somebody and they're walking around with that proverbial thought bubble over their head. That was, boy, if I ran this company, I wouldn't do it that way. And, so they believe it's time for them to step out and run their business and to create the success that they desire. They have a dream, an idea, and they really want to take that leap of faith. And they will have on-the-job training. That's what will happen. So I really directed at those people because I don't want to squash their dream. I want them to realize it, but understand that there are steps that have to be taken.
Yeah, I think it certainly depends on the business that you're running and the industry you're in. But I know from my own businesses that I've had, which I've had 6 companies now, and my companies they've reached anywhere between, depending on the business, between 5 million and 25 million. So I have some real world experience when it comes to this revenue idea, and I think that the businesses that I've been involved with, and certainly it depends on the business, that like the revenue targets where your business starts to change a little bit, I'd say, mine are at $1 million in revenue. And then when you start getting around the $5 million mark in revenue, And then when you get to the 10 million or more in revenue, and then, we're not even going to talk about the after that, because then that's different. You have a management team in place, and, it's, starts to change things. But, um, you know, when you, the $1 million mark, is, it's a minor change. And again, it depends on the business you're in. But when you're at that point, what are you starting to see that changes in the business?
Well, yeah, I actually think it's a minor tweak in some of their behaviors, but it's a big place to start laying down foundational changes that will last them. So I would say if they miss this one, they've got to start catching up on it. I like to add that it could be 6 to 7 employees as well. And the reason I add that is um, you get to this critical juncture. It's probably an operational change. It's definitely a mindset change. And I think when I do talk to business owners at some point reaching that, or even one of the other changes, I say to them, you're at a critical juncture and you're going to have to make some changes. They're like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. What do I have to do? But one of the things that I see here is that you have to understand that no, it's true. It's just a fact that most people should not have more than 6 to 7 direct reports. I mean, it starts to get a little crazy. You can't be effective after that. And so at this level, you have 6 to 7 direct reports. You want to grow. And what you're really looking at is more of everything. Okay. If you're going to get to the next level, you have more sales, more meeting client demands, more invoicing, more collections on invoicing, more contracts to read, payroll, so on and so forth. And a lot of small business owners translate that into longer days and longer hours versus more person hours. And I need to add succinctly. And the other part of this is, and this is very common among folks at that level, they're very used to using the bank balance as their means of doing something, right? Right?
Yeah.
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 Oh, I have money to do that today. So
Yeah.
and that makes them decide whether or not they're going to pursue something. So they get stuck because they're looking at it very wrong. Any financial metric is downstream. That's sales you got 3 months ago. Now it's time to start looking at things like the sales when they're happening, fulfillment of your order, how long it takes. Are you retaining clients or losing clients? And are you retaining or losing employees? So I think that kind of sets the stage here where that change happens. And yeah, I mean, do you agree with that? I think that's a lot of what
Yeah.
I see.
I do. I mean, I think that it's bringing back all these memories now. And when I sat there and said, "Well, there's not as much change at $1 million," but there really was. I remember. So you have to start looking at you start switching. The bank account was the thing that you triggered with me. You have to start looking at your income statement, which is called profit and loss in QuickBooks. Maybe you got to put together an accounting package. You got to start using an accounting package, right? Maybe you have to start. These are things that you are going to starting to do to get to the next level, right? So you got to look at your income statement on a monthly basis. Got to be correct. You got to look at your. You should start looking at your balance sheet, although
Yeah.
that's not that important yet. But it's good practice, right? It's good practice. And then now you're starting to also outsource some things. So hopefully maybe you have a bookkeeper in there. Maybe you were doing the entries yourself. Maybe you start saying, you know what, let me get somebody else to do this. In general, you're starting to transition because you maybe start having employees now, where you're trying to teach them how you would do something, and that's a good start because. I think when you get to the next phase, it used to be too that at the $1 million mark, you were potentially moving. I know at that point, I moved out of my apartment at the time and got an office space.
Okay.
Right
Yeah.
now, I don't know if that's going to continue to go on. Depends on the business because of COVID. I think not because of COVID, but because it's now shown that you can potentially work out of your house and don't have to have that office space. And I think that the jury is out about that. To be honest with you, I'll state this now. I'm concerned that about the ability for you to build a company culture when someone's and people just completely underestimate the value of culture at a company. And but I not that I don't think that working from home is going to be is I think it is going to be a big part of the future. But so going back to what I was saying, like you're setting the ground rules for the number one most important thing, and that is if your company is going to grow at that point, um, past the $3 to $5 million mark, you are now going to have to start building processes and stopping. You're not going to be doing all the work anymore. And I wasn't this way, but I know that most of my fellow business friends, people who own companies, they, I think it's the adage is 9 out of 10 people are micromanagers if
Yes.
they run a business. I wasn't that way. I was happy to delegate, and
That's right. That's rare. That's rare.
yeah, I don't know if it.
Yeah.
I think honestly, I was happy to delegate. I think my companies grew much faster because of that attitude. But I probably could have been a little bit better about maybe reviewing work once in a while. I never got into trouble. I mean, when my businesses first started, my wife was my accountant and bookkeeper.
So you bring up a really good point. A really good point. One of the things I find that business owners do, especially because it's frightening, they have a tendency to hire friends and family, friends of friends,
Yep.
the kid down the street that knows IT, Uncle Joe, who's a real estate agent, but he's going to read your contracts for you. And they do this because it's comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, somebody who's doing IT, and they'll do your web page for you too, which is probably not they should not be doing your web page for you.
Yeah.
There's different mindsets there. And even people who just out of your company's doing okay, and out of the goodness of your heart, somebody in your church lost their job, and you're like, oh, I was thinking of bringing an office manager. Do you know Microsoft Office, and can you answer the phone? And this is the time where and the other part is, so this is employees and your vendor support mechanisms that you're using. And for me, this is the time where you have to say, here's all the functional roles and responsibilities I need to get to the next step. Who's doing what? Are these the people that I really need? And a
Yeah.
business owner said to me, he realized after probably 8-10 years in business that the people that got him started were not the people that were going to get him to the next level. And it could be a little bit of a bitter pill because these are the people that you've come to love and they make a family out of your company. But it's time to actually hire purposefully.
Yeah, Barbara,
And
you're so right. Wow, I just remember that so well. I mean, um, I try. Listen, I always say I forgot about this. The hardest decision I had ever made in business was to bring my wife on as an accountant, as a bookkeeper. She's surprised by that answer, but the reason I did it was from a different perspective. She has her master's in accounting, so I wasn't worried about her from a knowledge, a technical standpoint. I just I never lost perspective as to what I'm doing this for. I didn't want to ruin my marriage, Yeah. So that was a thing. But hiring people, hiring people that are friends or stuff like that. The problem is that I always felt that it clouded my ability to give feedback or say the right thing or everything. So I kind of tried to avoid that. It did happen every once in a while. I mean, the biggest thing, I think everybody's different. And certainly the biggest adjustment I had to make when I became a business owner was business owners typically are not good at managing people.
Mhm.
They're kind of the visionary. Maybe they're ones who get things done.
Yes.
There's three types of people that I know. There's the leaders, there's the worker bees. I'm sorry, there's the managers, and then there's the worker bees. And unfortunately, for me, the learning how to manage people was the hardest part of being an entrepreneur for me.
Yes.
And once I got to a certain size, I was happy to bring on somebody that managed the people that I worked with, because that was the number one biggest problem I had. Now, by the way, my when I brought my wife on board, it did not create any issues, other than sometimes when we'd be going to bed, she'd start telling me about my accounts receivable, and I'd be like, I I don't want to know, but I'm going to bed. I don't want to know who owes me money right now. So I would have to calm her down, and I'd say, talk to me about it at the office. And
Right, right.
and so
Got to have a little separation.
a
And I think
separation.
that's part of the evaluation. Who's in it here that's going to help me get to the next stage, and who was I doing a favor for? Who has met their talent level, and maybe they're not trainable to another level? It just requires that evaluation. And you brought up another good point. The leadership of a business owner. The one thing I truly, truly believe in is if you had a desire and you wanted to do something, what was its purpose? I always ask clients, what's your North Star? What is the reason you get up and you go do that work every day? And my hope is they answer something, oh, I want to retire at 40. No, I don't want to hear that. I really don't want to hear that. Prior life, and I call it the North Star, and I'll give you a good example. In a prior, when I was chief operating officer, I was in the health and safety business, environmental health and safety. It had a very intrinsic purpose. These people got up, their skill sets were to keep people safe, actually to keep them alive at work. They didn't have to think about, oh, what's the reason for this company? They knew, okay? But that had to be solidified. That had to be the overarching reason, and it had to be celebrated. And I think it's very important that the business owner constantly remind folks what the good part of what they're doing is there. And I think we all know that the CEO has to also say the vision for the company. And I think they get muddled about what a vision is. And maybe you can tell me about your experience. I define a vision as what will the company look like, and what will the world look like if this company is successful, if we succeed in doing what we're doing. 3 years out, 5 years out, this is what the vision is. Maybe we'll have sold our business, our product to such and such or so many. I do have a client who invented this amazing product. He's a chemist. He knows epoxies, and he realized that what he could create would stop slips and trips and falls. And so he's out there, one step at a time, fixing the world. And that's such an amazing idea, and he has to celebrate that. But he has to give a vision to his team of what that looks like. You know, every ballpark in the United States by 2024 or something, 2024. So, and
Yeah,
of course, go
there's
ahead.
there was. I mean, I had three things to add to what you were saying. The first two are, there's these two really good books um, that echo what you're talking about. One is Start with Why, which is by Simon Sinek. Now, it's a simple read, and I think that, not that I didn't think about this before the book, but I kind of reinforced it. I teach my kids about this too. I have a 20-year-old, and I have a 12-year-old, but I haven't started working with him yet. 20, I make sure he says, why are you doing this? Why are you going to college? I started that when he was, 17 or 18 years old. I'm like, why do you go to school? What's the purpose? And I always want them to understand why. Now, the purpose of this, like why I'm saying that, why, is that it's really a good idea. If your why should take a lot of work. It shouldn't be an overnight, oh, I know it, right? It just takes a lot of tweaking. You're changing it. Your business changes sometimes, and so your why changes. But if you can get your why to a non-monetary
Right.
reward, it will drive everybody in the company.
Yes.
You know, and so and an example of that was this other book. I became there's a book by Robert Bloom, and he was the guy who started this company called Publicis, which was the number one biggest advertising agency in the world. And I met Bob, and he wrote this book called The Inside Advantage. It's the best business book that had biggest influence on me. And I had my whole team read it, and I think I had 28 employees at the time, and I had my management team read it, which was three other people, and we worked on it with Robert Bloom, and he did it really inexpensively with us. And these inside advantage was the idea of that whole principle of what is it that drives your company. And when we came up with what drove our company, it just galvanized
Mm-hmm.
everybody at the company because we really believed in what we were doing. I don't want to get too complicated. We came up with the tag name "Rewarding Travel Experiences" because what we were doing is we were placing registered nurses at hospitals throughout the United States on long-term temporary assignments. That's what the company did. And there's these nurses who go to work at hospitals for 13 weeks and then they go to work at another hospital, and so by us moving to making sure that the nurses had a good experience on their assignment, it changed our customer satisfaction
Yes.
targets. So that was a big deal. On a different note, and I think this was important, going from my second to third company, learning how to hire people
Mm-hmm. Yes.
is a not only a unique skill, it's a trial and error skill. And if you're going to get to the bigger numbers of 3, 5 million, 10 million, you have to be good at knowing how to hire. And when I went from my second company to my third company, the third company, I had said I I didn't like the people who worked for me for the second company. Like
Okay.
yeah,
I'm
yeah. So
not
I was,
listening.
yeah. So I was like, I was like, they weren't the right people for the jobs.
Right. Right.
And I didn't look at them. I said it wasn't their fault. It was my fault because I didn't have a good job description. I didn't have measurements. I didn't look for the right type of people. I didn't have anchors when I was hiring them to make sure that they could do what they said they could do. And so like I took a deep dive into how to hire people. And I said, okay. And then I also made sure I understood the purpose of my company and, all other stuff. And so we got really good at hiring people. And then the last part about that was I actually tried to hire people that I really, really liked. And that on a personal level, because you spend so much time with the people that you're hiring in a small business. I said, you know what? I want to make sure I hire people that I like being around. And that doesn't overtake the other stuff, but it was a part of it. And so, yeah.
This is a good time. If you can do this early on, it's a good practice. I had a very similar experience and a high level of attrition. I think at one point we had 5 people leave at one day,
Mm.
and it was an eye opener. And we became very much more purposeful. I learned how to do, interviewing on behavior and things like that, and asking the solid questions. And I always said I will hire attitude over ability. Because sometimes when you're in a very technical field, you look at that resume and they can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
They could be the biggest weirdo that ever walked the face of the earth, and they don't fit in with your culture, um, and they don't get their job done on time. I'm never that impressed with the letters of those multiple letters after names, which it's great you did that, but are you hireable? Are you employable?
Agreed.
And so I set out and I said, I want people to stay here. What's going to keep them here?
Yeah.
And I changed the level of tenure. On average, I think if we looked at just key employees, we were somewhere around 12 years. When I'm hitting into the 20-year mark of the company, and then even junior staff were staying at least 5. And the book that changed my life was Dan Pink's Drive. Have you ever read that?
I haven't read it. I know it. I
Yeah,
know
it's
it.
worth
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Dave Burkus does a similar. They talk about the purpose of the company. The folks have to have mastery of their skill, and they have to have autonomy to make decisions on their jobs. And that is when we talk about a CEO owner moving back from the day-to-day operations. This is so important for them to embrace because number one, everybody can't report to you. Period. They just can't. And you can't walk out into the bullpen or here and grab the junior fire marshal and say, hey, come here, I want you to do something, because they're going to do it, right? And they're going to upset the whole apple cart of what they were supposed to be working on. You need to stick to the key people that you move up and surround yourself with. So
Yeah.
I might have digressed there a little bit, but
Well, I think the number one rule that they say about building a business is you have to have great people working for you, right? But I think but that's I don't know how to say it. It's too simple. I mean, you have to start with yourself first. So, for example, you were talking about the book Drive. I knew that I had to become a better manager. I had to be. I really had to work at it. So I took a course. I don't know if they still offer it anymore, but a Dale Carnegie course about management. And in Dale Carnegie's courses, you have to build something called a PRD, a position results document, which defines what the person's responsible for and how they're going to be measured. And then you have a monthly meeting with them to go over how they're doing and give them feedback and see what you can do to help them. You know, when I look back at all of those things, I mean, there is so much it takes to building a company.
it is.
It's so much. It's just, you know, uh, going back to just the hiring, I worked for Xerox for 9 years, and Xerox back in the day I worked there, which was 30 years ago, was the Google of its time.
Right.
And the way that Xerox hired people was, the way I was used to. They hired these polished people, professional, came from good colleges. They dress nice and they look nice, and they have great communication skills. That was what I was used to. But the people I had to hire for the company and the industry was in for a number of years wasn't that type of person. It was more street smart type of people. So, so the point being is that if you're going to build a company that's going to be much bigger, you got to change.
Yeah.
I think you got to improve, right? And the person that's running that $1 million company is going to be quite a bit different than the person who's running a $5 million company. And is that your experience as well?
Yeah, change is hard. Change is really hard. It's scary. And for business owners, I think the fear of that change, and there's another aspect to this while that change comes in and it starts to erode on them, but they're fearful that they just got settled into this thing. I feel this is comfortable. How do I get to? Well, you have to change to get to the next level. But the other part is a lot of these people have a skill set. They have a
Yeah.
discipline, and that's part of their DNA. It's who they are. Maybe they've spent a lot of time working up to be a CPA or some other skilled person, and they're going to stop doing that. They're not really going to be on the front line providing that service unless it's really high level. And to start that, by the time you get to 10 million, if you're doing that, it better be so cherry picked and so high paying that it's worth your time.
Yeah.
I think at the 5 million, you could still have some
Yeah.
what we used to call billable hours. But honestly, that I think is hard for business owners. because they feel removed from the action. They don't feel like a part of them is being put out there. I hear them, oh, I used to run the blah, blah, blah account and it was wonderful. And they called me in the middle of the night because I was so good. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's probably not going to happen anymore. It's
Yeah.
going to happen to your key employees. And you'll
Yeah.
have
And
to go out to the bar to hear the story,
yeah, there were two things that really helped me. One was, and I mentioned in a lot of shows, I, I joined the entrepreneur organization, which is, I talk about it every show because it's such a big deal. But, it's about 15,000 members throughout the world. And the entrepreneur organization is there to support business owners. They put you in a forum group of between 8 to 12 people like yourself.
yeah.
And I've been with the same EO group, my forum group of 9 guys for 25 years. So we meet every month for 5 hours. And that was huge because we were all like learning and building our companies. And, one guy would mention that he's learning how to hire people. And then we would, all, think, oh, maybe that's what I need to do. And then they also have monthly lectures as well as an organization. So that was a big deal about learning how to be an entrepreneur. And number two was, and I think this is really important, I actually brought on a business coach that was with me for 9 years.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think it's really hard to improve yourself if you're not doing those two things. You can't be introspective enough. Right. And I brought the business coach on because my company was growing in leaps and bounds. We were on the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies in the United States, and I didn't have a business partner. I was a sole. I was running the business
Right.
by myself, and so I had nobody to talk to.
Right, it's lonely at
And
the top.
yeah, and so I needed somebody for that, and to honestly help me where my blind spots. Okay, what do I not know that I don't know? I don't know. And yeah, and so she was with me for 9 years, and I don't know if you know, like Michael Gerber is a famous author who, right?
Okay.
He wrote a lot. His famous quote was, "You should be working on your business, not in your business." Right? She was his second in command, so she left him and became, my coach, and that was, very helpful. But again, it comes back to the idea, Barbara. And one of the things I like, Barbara, about you is that you don't portray yourself as a coach as much as a consultant.
So
Correct?
actually, it's very funny because I am a certified coach facilitator
Coach.
with the Alternative Board. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was with Tab for I was being coached for 14 years. I still keep my coach.
Yeah.
The business owner who I work for was also in a board. He set me up in a second in command and said, this is what we got to do. We need these alternate people helping us. So yeah, I'm with the Tab of Northern New Jersey. It's new for me, but I do enjoy it. I do like the coaching part. I do work as a consultant as well, because part of what I learned also is that you can hire a lot of consultants when you're in small business, but then who's going to get the work done? So I do help my clients get the work done. I put my COO hat on and I say, well, this is how it gets facilitated.
Good.
So whether it's me doing it and moving it through, and I may be working with junior staff, or I'm hiring I'm recommending another person for them, that they can work with.
Wow.
So
That's a great thing because, that allows the business owner to kind of focus on their business, and maybe they're not ready for a full-time COO yet.
right.
Right. And you can kind of fulfill that part. And then the CEO, the owner of the company, gets used to what it's like for a operations person to be managing their staff or doing whatever else that they would do. And then you can start backing into okay, this is the type of person I have to hire when I'm ready to hire someone full time. So
Yes.
that makes a lot of sense to me.
That has actually happened, and then I work with the COO.
Yeah.
Maybe they
Transitioning.
yeah, I can see the things that they might not be understanding. Maybe they're very good operational, but they don't really have a lot of understanding reading an income statement, and they're mixing up things. And so, hey, we got to spend some time working on understanding this. I'll talk to the accountant. Can you sit down and explain what goes into this, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I kind of like what I'm doing, because I purposely did it that way, because it was great having a lot of consultants, but then the work would always fall to me
Yeah.
to get it done. And
Yeah.
it was like, okay, let's just add this to my list. So,
Yeah. The thing too, like going back to the coaching thing and the consulting thing, is my advice to our listeners is, nowadays when I hired a coach, it was pretty unique. Yeah, that was a long time ago. It was pretty unique to have a coach,
mm,
right? Now everybody has their shingle out the door and says that they're a coach, right? So if you're looking at a coach, you just make sure that you really want to interview them, find out exactly what they've been doing, and then if they haven't been a coach for several years
mm,
and working with the same type of smaller businesses that you have, you know, keep looking.
yeah, I agree with that.
Because well, after 9 years, my coach and I agreed that maybe it was time for me to bring on another coach in to replace her, because everything that she had taught me, I kind of
You
I
went through it.
knew, yeah. So I brought somebody else on, and he was with me for 6 months, and he was terrible. It was terrible, and
Yeah,
he
you
had just
have to
put,
like your coach, that's for sure.
yeah. Well, it wasn't that I didn't like him; it's just that he wasn't he didn't have a lot of experience as a coach, So my question, coming back to your CEO work, when you've come in with a company that's smaller, and maybe you weren't the COO, but you came in, what's the number one biggest glaring problem you often see when a business is moving from you know, that smaller business, and they're moving to a little bit bigger? What's the number one biggest problem you say?
It's probably two, but I do see that everybody, of course, like if you're at the 6 to 7 and they can't get past that, everybody's reporting to the owner.
Yeah.
All right, nobody has a real defined role. The Everybody has I'll go back to the functional roles and responsibilities. They have a title, but they're doing 7 different things, none of which, or maybe one of the things hits the title, and the rest is something else. And probably don't have a lot of processes and procedures. And again, they probably don't have the right support mechanisms. And to clarify on the point about when you're looking for a better accountant, a better attorney, a better IT, hire somebody who has about the same size company you do, because they're living it.
Yeah.
Don't hire a single person. I love my tax accountant. He's been with me forever. Do I go to him for business advice? Absolutely not. I go to him for tax advice.
Yeah.
And that it's really important, because they're feeling what you're feeling. So I think you can make that stretch there. Uh, and the other one is, again, I think that the second one would be very undefined roles, and it's now time to say, well, what did you hire this person for, and what do you want them to do? Can we take half of what they're doing and half of what this person is doing and create a new role that makes a little more sense to what you're trying to achieve here? And can we start identifying a key person that's going to take over the day to day for you, report up to you, and allow you to start hiring more? I know it's a problem when they're at the 6 to 7, and every time they hire somebody new and they're moving up to get to 10 people because they want to get more work in, and then 3 leave. There's a reason you're stretched. So,
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense to you.
It
What I
does.
pointed out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just keeping everyone in mind this. This is the old adage that if you have turnover in your company, high turnover, it's not because of the employees.
All right.
All right, it's because of you, and just because of your processes, it's and you're hiring. So it's not a simple, oh well, I just can't find the right people. That doesn't. Are you training them?
Right.
Are you hiring the right people? Do you give them all the tools they need? is your work environment toxic? Is there somebody who's in your organization who's causing problems?
Right.
Yeah. Again, I went through all this, and it's not clean. Running. Listen, when I worked for Xerox, when you work for a big company and it's all clean. Everything's nice. It's set up. It's processed. It's all, it, it took them decades to be that way.
Exactly.
When you're starting your business, it's the word is autodidactic, and it means self-taught.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is,
experiential learning, right?
it is. And I tell you what, though, in the last 30 years, there's so many more tools and education forums and people that can kind of give you a heads up of, hey, this is the path. Because 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot of information about running a business. Now I feel like there's a lot more.
And it is set up for smaller businesses in a much better way,
Yeah.
which is nice. And the one thing I'm going to add to that, because you brought it up, they're not doing proper onboarding of employees. There's no process to it. So people are hired. They're given their paperwork to shuffle through for the first day. They're introduced around the office. They sit at their desk. Somebody's supposed to go by and teach them a little something, something. They should have a 90-day goal. Where do you want this person to be at the end of 90 days? Where do you want them to be at the end of 6 months? You just spent an enormous amount of time looking for them. You hope you got the right person. And now you're just going to let them flap in the wind. So that is something that I really stress with my clients. I actually will go to the whiteboard and get the key people in and work it out. Here's 90 days. What's it going to look like? Let's go backwards. What do we need to do at every stage to get them there? And it's an eye opener.
I completely, and what's interesting, Barb, is when you do that, when you do it right, the reaction of your employee after a week, they're like, wow, this is a really good company I'm working for, right? Because they're so used to other companies doing a terrible job, right? Yeah. And so when you go in there, and we got really detailed about it. I know this is going to sound stupid, but when someone came, I gave every new employee a plant, and I said, "You're going to grow with our company." Right. And so, but we had it down, and we had, mentors assigned and checkup and all those other things. And people would be like, wow, this is fantastic. And then when you change, there was one other book that actually, this is the biggest book that made the biggest change in my life, was a book called Whale Done, WHALEDONE. It's a book by Spencer Johnson, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager, who's very famous, or 1 Minute Salesperson. Yeah. So it's great. It's only like 20 pages, but it's a book about how they train whales. And the idea here is that you can't like hit a whale with a stick.
Right.
Right. You have to train a whale through positive reinforcement. And that book made the biggest change in my life, in not only how I managed people, but how I became a better parent, in that it changed me to look for things that people were doing that were positive, because I could make them feel better about the work that they were doing. And then the way that I gave them feedback was much different than the way I used to give them feedback, which a lot of entrepreneurs are so driven. They kind of, I wouldn't say yell at their people, but they're kind of negative toward their people. And your people want to be told they're doing a good job. And
everybody wants to know why they're there. They want to know why, and they want to know they're doing a good job. I feel that onboarding is so important. And if you really, the minimum 90 days, best is 6 months, that it allows an employer to take a little more risk. So let's say if you're doing good interviewing on candidates, and there is a candidate who maybe is a little shy of those amazing skills that you're looking for, because you want them to be out there producing right away, if that's the case. But they have an amazing attitude. They're personable. They're going to add to the team. If you do proper onboarding and you say, I want that person to have all those skills by 6 months, you're willing to take that risk a little more. And you will probably have a much better employee who appreciates what you did for them, who you took, and they're trained really well now as well. So
Yeah.
I put a lot into. I probably should have put that as the first thing. Then I'm gonna go back and change my answer.
Yeah. Well, you know what the thing is, I think you brought up a lot of points, and you and I have kind of dissected it. We both have lived through it. There's just a lot, and so I think we're going to wrap this up right now. And I think the number one thing that I would say, and then Barbara, I'm going to ask for your opinion, is pick one. Pick one of something that we talked about today as our listeners. Pick one thing that we talked about and work on that one thing, rather it be great onboarding, rather it be starting off with a great vision statement, or building processes in your company so that everybody knows what to do. Looking at your income statement and your balance sheet every single month. Maybe hiring better advisors. That's the nice thing about hiring someone like Barbara, or a coach or someone like that, is they can kind of prioritize these things for you and say, okay, this month we're going to focus on this. And so, like, if I was doing this again, like, I'd go to Barbara, I'd say, Barbara, I'm at $1 million right now in revenue. I want to be at $5 million in revenue. What do I need to build internally in order to get to that point? Instead of saying, let me go out and get some more sales so that I can get to 5 million,
Right.
instead of that, taking a step back, right? What would you say what would you add to kind of conclude this podcast out?
Well, the business owner did this for a self-realization. Number one, they got in it for some self-fulfillment, and it sits with them. It in every, they wear the hat. And this is one thing I say: if this all fails, you're the one turning out the lights. Okay, so, and that's a harsh reality. So you don't want to be there. And what you really want to do is build your team, and you are going to have to change your role. So the person that you are when you start it will not be that person at 20 million. And you need to embrace that. The person at 20 million to 10 million is going to have a lot of key people who are reporting to them. They are not going to be able to just walk out and give every staff somebody something to do. That should not be. It should not be matrix. And they have to embrace that as part of the change they're going to go through. And if they don't, they will get stuck. I really believe that. If they can't do that, they will get stuck. So, yes, absolutely. Hire a coach or somebody to help you realize that, and build your team based on people who share your vision and your dream. That's what I say.
Good stuff. Good podcast. I loved it.
Thank you.
So I'd like to thank Barbara so very much from JJ Miller Incorporated for coming on to today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your business, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at fscreditline.com. Barbara, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
So my email is B Alves, Alves, at jjmillerllc.com. My phone number is 908-334-5184. My website is www.jjmillerllc.com. But you can get me any of those places. So
yep, and it'll be in our show notes too.
Okay,
everyone wants to get a hold of Barbara.
Appreciate
Barbara,
that.
great job today.
Thank you. Stay out of the rain.
Yeah, that's right. And it's raining outside.
Or
That's
here in
okay.
New Jersey.
Instead of snow,
It's
I'm
better.
ready for it to move on.
Yeah.
For our listeners, if you are interested in getting any new business ideas or any worldly advice, I tweet daily about lessons for business owners at Halasnik. That's Halasnik. And it's great thought starters, and comes from someone with 25 years of experience building companies. So Just want to thank everyone for listening, and remember that building a company takes a lot of skill set, and you have to keep working on improving your skill set. And I think Barbara and I today really emphasized that today. You
Yeah.
have to just keep learning, keep getting better, and you have to change.
Thank
So,
you.
yep. Everybody have a great day. Stay safe. Enjoy the summer. It's coming.